SmartServ live webinar. We will be recording this session and we will try to share it with you as well, but it'll be best to stay on the webinar and interact, because at the end of the session, we're going to have an excellent Q&A session. Um, Today's guest is Don Jones, and he's the owner of Controlled Hydronics based out of Telluride. Don, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Adi.
Great. And Don will be talking about how to build a successful business, especially in the trade business area. And Don's been at it for quite a while. Just by way of a quick introduction, I will share what a quick blurb about Don in just a little bit, but let's make sure everybody can hear us well and just go through some hygiene checks really quickly. You can use the chat button to interact with the hosts and the panelists. Well, I'm the host, and you've got the Q&A section to pose any questions that you have for Don and myself. And make sure your audio is set to the same as system so you can hear us all well. We do have a few questions to the audience. During the webinar, and when you see a pop-up in front of you, just choose the right option that makes sense to you and hit submit. All right. Now, just a little bit about SmartServ and myself. SmartServ is a platform that's essentially a configurable field solution that helps with all the operational aspects of running a trade business. There's a lot to it that essentially makes it a solution that solves problems for trade businesses, and that's where I step in. On paper, I'm the associate director of business at SmartServ, but what I do really is find problems to solve with the SmartServ platform. And well, that's about myself and SmartServ. Let's get started today. Don has been in the field service area for over 40 years. He started off in New England as a sheet metal duct installer, and he's been building businesses. He's hired multiple technicians that helped him enter multiple different business areas of working in. And today, with about 22 employees and 14 trucks, he's serving Telluride, Mountain Village, Durango, and the surrounding areas. And today, our conversation is all about how do you build a highly successful field service business, especially in the climate today, right? And well, it's a conversation by the end of which we would hope you have the following takeaways. How do you hire high-performing technicians? How do you upsell and grow your revenue? How do you expand your business into multiple verticals? And finally, understanding the importance of digitization as it relates to the field service industry. And Don's going to walk us through a lot of these aspects one by one. But first, we'd like to just start off by understanding what trade you're from. It could be one of them. It could be something off that. But we'd love your input. So you've got your first poll question in front of you. Just choose the option that makes sense and hit submit. We'll put the answers in front of you right away. Don, how's the weather down in Telluride today? Is it cold?
Yes, it's been extremely cold, and we're lacking for snow somewhat. Most of the rest of Colorado has better snow than we have at this point, unfortunately, because we're a ski area.
Right. We'll just give a few more seconds for the response and close out the poll. Well, we've got a lot of representation from all over. I think there's a bit of everyone here, Don, a bit of all industries represented here, right? So there's HVAC, there's fire protection and electrical. That seems to be the mainstay. And of course, there's a few plumbers and water treatment guys here as well. Welcome, everyone. And I'd just like Don to walk us through his journey of what it has been. And it has been a roller coaster ride, Don. It'll be great if you could just introduce us to your journey.
Sure. I started in the trades in the late 70s after having worked as a printer for a while, and I didn't really feel like that was getting me anywhere. So I hired on with a sheet metal company in New Hampshire and began installing ductwork and eventually learned how to measure and fabricate and became a foreman after a short while. And that kind of gave me the idea to start my own business, which I did in 1980, 2 years later. I started a business in an old barn in New Hampshire and bought a bunch of sheet metal equipment with money I had saved up, and began doing residential, commercial, and industrial work. I was bidding off the Dodge reports and working various commercial and jobs as well as the residential world.
Mm-hmm.
Through the 1980s, I began learning more about furnaces, oil burners. I learned low voltage control wiring.
Wow.
Towards the end of the 80s, I began installing boilers and discovered that I loved soldering pipe and still do. So that was the evolution through the 80s. Towards the end of the 80s, I was starting a family, and the regional economy took a dump. Basically, most of the banks in New Hampshire went under, and all buildings stopped. It seems the banks lent too much money to too many developers, and they built too much dead real estate that wouldn't sell, and just killed the market. And a lot of tradespeople left New England. I was one of the last to leave. There were no U-Haul trailers left, so I bought a race car trailer and loaded all my stuff up like the Beverly Hillbillies and moved to Colorado, where I worked a couple of years for another contractor and then started my own business, one-man heating service, and grew from there. Branched out into plumbing and then back into sheet metal, and grew rapidly up until the recession in 2008, when, of course, worldwide we saw a major recession, and had to lay off a bunch of people, struggled for a number of years to get by, and then the economy slowly came back, and we were able to rebuild and grew the company back to what it was before the recession, and then continued to add more different aspects of work that we were able to perform. So we're able to do a lot of different tasks, which is really a necessity in a remote location like we find ourselves in Southwest Colorado.
Wow, that's been quite a ride, Don. And I do recall one of the big reasons for you moving to Telluride was the snow, the powder.
Yeah, I began skiing at the age of 5, and always loved skiing, competed through high school. I was a pretty successful ski racer, and never got over the love of skiing. And at the same time the economy was going bad in New England, the snow was drying up in New England. So Colorado sure seemed like a good direction for me. It was good work and good snow.
Nice. And 2000, the big recession, how did that impact you, Don? Because I know there were a lot of businesses that even went under during that time. In fact, if you look at the unemployment statistics, the rates really went up between 2008, 2010.
Yeah, it was a very difficult time. Having to lay people off was very painful. I had always prided myself in, I felt responsible for all the families of the employees that worked for me. And it was a terrible feeling to think that, gosh, all these people are not going to have a job to support their families and pay their bills. It was a tough thing to lay people off, but then we worked on a little bit of vertical, as you put it, during the recession. We were lucky enough to land a huge solar job, photovoltaic job. Now
Mhm,
I was never an electrical contractor until that time, but I hired a master electrician and we registered as a Colorado electrical contractor for a couple of years, and did a 460 panel PV system, 112 kilowatts, at the local wastewater treatment plant. And
mhm,
that was a real fun project. And I've always had a love of solar. I trained at Solar Energy International for a number of years, off and on. And so that was a fun thing, helped get us through the recession. You do what you have to make it through tough times. And that was one of the things that we did during that time.
right. But it all turned out for the better, Don, because where you are today is amazing. I mean, you've gone through a roller coaster ride, but it looks all good now. Do you want to walk us through what your businesses look like today?
Sure. Yeah, we several years back, I hired a guy from Durango who was a wonderful boiler guy, who was having a tough time running his business. And so anyways, he answered one of my ads and came up and worked in Telluride with me for a while. And but then we talked, he missed his family and down in Durango area. And so we decided we would try to start a little enterprise down there. And it worked, and it's still working. We've only got one guy down there at this time, but at the same time, we started a business up in Crested Butte. And actually, I was called by a contractor up there who asked me to bid a 27 unit affordable housing, construction. And I at first asked him, what in the world are you calling a contractor in Telluride to do affordable housing in Crested Butte? And apparently he couldn't find anybody else that wanted to bid the project. So,
Mhm,
being an entrepreneurial spirit, I gave him a price, got the job, and we did it. And that we found out that a lot of people needed our services in Crested Butte, and
mhm,
that market has taken off like crazy. We've got anywhere from 6 to 8 guys working up there every day, and we have 2 3-bedroom units rented up there to house our people. Housing is a huge problem in our areas of service. Both
mhm.
Crested Butte and Telluride it's extremely difficult to find housing. But yeah, so we have branched out in a number of directions, and we offer a lot of different services in all of our locations to try and
Yeah, I mean,
attract business.
right. The list looks almost endless. There's underground plumbing to all the way up to trim, heating, forced air, ventilation, exhaust. Is there something you don't do yet, Don?
Well, if you have something you are interested in, I'd be interested in hearing about it.
Well, one thing that really stood out is how you work with master technicians to quickly enter to explore a new kind of job, right? And especially the PV project, you just started working with a master electrician and picked up that project. That was a really solid approach.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have people who can pull the appropriate permits and who have the appropriate knowledge to manage the work.
Mhm.
So, having key employees is obviously necessary for you to successfully complete these ventures.
Right. And of course, you do need a certain amount of flying hours under the belt to identify top talent. And at this point, I'll just take this opportunity to ask our audience about the flying hours they have under the belt. How long have they been in their existing business? And you should see a poll question in front of you. Just spend um, just choose the right option and hit submit. Should take just a few seconds. And I'm sure you've come across a lot of different characters in your line of work. Good, bad, ugly. I'm sure you've seen them all.
That's certainly true, and a lot of colorful characters. Yes, there have been some bad actors. I think any of us who have been in business for a period of time know that there's some substance abuse problems in the trades, and that's an unfortunate thing. But the other side of the equation is you meet a lot of good people. You meet a lot of people who are very proud of their trade. They're proud of their skill set. They're fun people to work with, fun to trade ideas with, and I not only trade ideas with people who work for me, but I
Mhm.
also have a good relationship with most of my competitors and openly trade ideas with them. Uh, it's fun to be able to talk to these guys who are my competitors, and we're all on the same level, and you can actually make it work well for your business to have a good relationship with people who you compete with, and
Mm.
we oftentimes refer each other when we are too busy. It's been a good relationship.
That's healthy competition right there. For those of you who haven't answered the poll question yet, just spend a few seconds to choose the option that makes sense and hit submit. We've got most of responses yet. We'll give a few more seconds for you to respond and we'll move forward. Let's put up the results on the screen. Okay, we've got most of our audience done is more than 10 years, followed by those who are 2 to 5 years into the business. Now that actually brings me to an interesting next question. For those who are just starting out, who are just at the beginning of their career as a business owner, do you have any tips or tricks on how to hire the right technicians for the business? How to hire the right talent?
Yeah, well, having been a beginner back in the day, I, of course, made a lot of mistakes, and
Hmm.
you learn from those mistakes. And over the years, I've tried a lot of different techniques. I've taken advice from a lot of other people on how to acquire good talent, and
Right.
there's a lot of ideas out there. I've kind of developed my own scenario, hopefully pulling the best ideas from all these different people that I've spoken with over the years. But
Mm.
we're in a bit of a strange market, which might be different than some of you people out there. But we're in a market where we have too much work. Sounds like not a bad problem, but it can be hectic. And so our biggest problem is finding and housing new people. So, we run ads constantly on some of the internet recruiting websites. And those ads go stale quickly. You put a new ad up, you get some inquiries, and then they taper off. And pretty much the inquiries you get after a few weeks are people who are obviously not qualified to do the work. So we change the ads up. Of course, doing as many different things as we do. We're always needing new people in many of the different aspects of work that we do. So I have a whole list of ads for each position, and we just change those up in hopes of attracting new
Keep
people.
rotating them, keep switching them up.
Exactly. And each time you change the ads, you get a fresh group of recruits. So that's a very important aspect, is to change it up. And then, once you are lucky enough to land some people, we hire some guys who are high-level techs, and we have others who are, apprentices or helpers. And we rely on our experienced guys to, teach the newbies how to teach them the trade, and very important to get them registered with the state. As far as plumbing goes, it's super important to get people registered as an apprentice. And if any of you people out there have plumbing business, it's super important to follow through on all of the licensing and encourage your guys to accelerate their way up to journeyman. Most of us don't need employees at any higher level than journeyman, as long as you got a master. There isn't much difference as far. The only thing a master can do is pull a permit. Other than that, it's journeyman is quite fine. As far as interviewing the people, I've gone through a lot of different ideas on how to interview people, but I find one of the best ones is to get the other person comfortable and just kind of engage in some conversation about work, throw in a little bit about family and other interests, but then circle back to work and just talk about the technical aspects of what we do. And I often learn a lot more about people through casual conversation than by asking them a set of questions that they might be expecting. It's if you can get people into a casual mood, they're going to be more open with you.
And that's when you can identify both good and bad traits of technicians. I mean, you did mention substance abuse is definitely a real problem that makes for an undesirable hire. But then you also, in our past conversations, mentioned some specific traits that make for a good technician. And well, of course, honesty is up top, but then there's this curiosity and passion and that genuine interest in learning more about their trade. Could you talk about what traits you found to be difficult to identify, sure, but most important for a technician to have to be an asset to the business?
Yeah, well, one thing when you're interviewing, people are always going to put on their best face. So you need to be, thinking about that as well. But, you want to ascertain how honest a person is key to having a good employee. You're going to have to place a lot of trust in someone that you're hiring. and you got to make sure that they're honest. We run background checks using an internet agency that specializes in that, and we send them a link, and they have to the prospective employee has to approve the background check. But getting back to, questioning, talk a lot about past work experience, and touch on, obviously, talk about honesty. And then, discuss the different things that one needs to know in the industry, and what's their interest in learning more about the trade, and learning more about things outside of the exact trade that complement that. So let's say you're a boiler tech. It would make sense to learn controls as well. And if they, indicate a willingness or an interest in learning more things, that's a point in their favor as far as, wanting to hire them. And then, asking them, quizzing them a little bit about, how do you approach a problem at a job site? What's your method of operation? And let them talk, and be a good listener. And then always you want to have people who are people persons rather, who can interact with customers in a manner that makes the customers trust them, and feel good about what they're saying, what they're doing, how they're going about the task at hand.
Right.
So engaging with customers is huge.
Thank you, Don. And if that raises any thoughts, any questions from the audience, I would urge you to start typing in your questions in the Q&A section, so we can pick up those towards the end of the session. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end. Right. Thank you, Don, for this. And at this point, I'd also like to take this opportunity and ask our audience, what's the most preferred way that you use to hire technicians today? Is it posting ads, or word of mouth referrals, or do you use agencies, or just invite open applications and advertise that? Take a few seconds, choose your response, and hit submit. We'll present the findings just in a few seconds. Now, apart from posting recruitment ads, and I know you use online sources quite extensively. What other techniques have you used? What other channels have you used to source talent?
Well, I mean, obviously, local acquaintances, referrals have worked over the years. And for us, if we can find somebody local who has a reasonable level of skill, that's quite desirable, because, of course, lodging is a huge component of hiring new people. We've talked to hiring agencies. I've never been really thrilled with hiring agencies. The fees are quite high, and I've never really gone down that road.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Don. The audience, those of you who haven't answered in, just choose your response, and we'll publish the results shortly. We'll close the poll in just 5 seconds. Okay, so we see a mix of all, a lot of word of mouth referral here. I'm sure if it's a friendly referral, that carries its own weight. An interesting mix of answers here. Don, I think most of the audience, apart from friend referrals or employee referrals, do depend on recruiting ads.
Yeah, it certainly looks that way, and I think to some degree that's a regional thing.
Hmm.
If you're in a more populated area, I think the chances of that being successful are far greater than if you are in a remote area like we are. I've talked to contractors, when I go to shows and things like that. I talk with contractors from different regions, and their businesses operate in a different realm where many of them seem to have much better availability of qualified technicians than we unfortunately have. And that's a good problem. But then on the other side of the coin, those businesses in higher population areas, I think, are doing more marketing and looking for business, where in our location we are not marketing because we are struggling to
Cater to the
be able to
demand that
perform
exists.
with
Hmm.
the jobs that we do have. Yeah, yeah.
I hear you. Okay. Well, thank you, Don, for that. And just to switch gears a little bit, that brings me to an interesting topic. You did mention with Control Hydronics, when you moved to Telluride, you did diversify in a lot of regions, in a lot of areas. And of course, there was the diversification itself. We've highlighted some of those aspects in that diagram. But then we'd like you to just spend a few moments and help us understand what was the need to diversify, apart from, just that immediate tactical value.
Well, I'm just interested in a lot of different things, and you do the same thing day after day, it gets kind of old, and so it's nice to be able to change it up. And but I think one of the main drivers was the fact that general contractors building new construction like the idea of having one company that can do all of their plumbing and mechanical needs. And that way they've got, one person they can go to, one person that's responsible. It makes it easier for the general contractor than having a bunch of different trades. And additionally, it's beneficial in that, if we're doing all these different aspects on a construction project, we are responsible for all of the coordination between all these different systems. So, you go in and you do the drainage, waste, and vent on your plumbing, and then immediately you get working on your ductwork before you start running water and gas. And where we control all of this, we are, for the most part, able to make it go in an order which makes sense, so that there is as little conflict as possible between these different aspects of the job.
Okay. Wonderful. Now, on that topic, we'd love to understand any businesses that are. And by the way, we've started seeing some questions flow in into Q&A. We'd urge the audience to continue as you as you see any thought that comes into mind, any question that you might want to ask Don, just feed it into the Q&A section, and we'll pick them up at the end. And so, Don, back to diversification. There are definitely a lot of good arguments for needing to diversify, but not, you know, you don't have a product manual. You don't have a step-by-step approach that's recommended anywhere that you can easily come by. So based on our conversations, we sort of put together a step-by-step sequence of activities that would help a business explore that option, right? And we've just jotted down those 5 steps that came up. maybe you want to educate the audience a little bit on how best to align to these 5 steps, a sequence of activities?
Sure. Perhaps a good example in our case might be the solar installation, something that I've always been interested in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started out, as I mentioned previously, attending classes at Solar Energy International in
Mm-hmm.
both solar thermal and solar photovoltaic. And your slide here showed, it mentions financing. So we talked to various lenders and came up with references that we could provide to people who wanted to do solar but couldn't afford to cough up the pile of cash necessary to make it happen. So having a lender in your back pocket really helps to sell the job. And then your next step, step 3, we've got to have people that know how to do the installation work. And in the case of the solar photovoltaic, as I mentioned, we hired a master electrician. I also had 2 guys on staff who were engineers who had been to school for engineering, one for electrical engineering, one for mechanical engineering. So I was lucky enough to have some talent already on my payroll to help bring that project through. And okay, try to get new vertical jobs from your existing customers. We would have customers call frequently about solar, many of them looking for solar thermal systems.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the problem with the solar, be it PV or thermal, is the payback period. And, a lot of people are looking to make money fast. And, if you're an investor and you're looking for a quick turnaround on your investment, solar may not be the best avenue.
Right.
But if you're a homeowner or a business owner that's in it for the long run, like a lot of us are, solar is a great option. But the payback, you have to be honest with people. Payback is not 3 or 4 years. It's payback is more like 8, 10, 20 years on solar. And, that makes it a little bit of a hard sell. But, if you've got someone who is excited about, being green and being able to have a system that's going to serve them well into the future without a lot of fossil fuels, that's a wonderful thing to be able to offer to people.
And that's where the market research then comes in to understand if that's just a one-off opportunity or if that exists in your service area.
Yeah, it's just another good talking point that you can have with customers. And you can circle around to many different types of systems and discuss all of them with your customers. It's actually enjoyable to field telephone calls from people and answer questions they might have and give them suggestions about various different ways they can conserve energy is one, or just make a system more reliable, or add additional comfort to their home. That's a lot of times that's an easy sell.
Fair point. And well, thank you for that input on. I'm sure that evokes a lot of thoughts. And the audience is strongly recommended to just type in your questions that we can pick up at the end. I see a question from Mark from Good Faith Plumbing that we can answer, I believe, right away, because Mark says, off seasons can be quite a difficult time, and if there's some way we can optimize during those seasons, that actually brings us to the next topic we had slated for discussion. That is, how do you upsell or cross sell using service agreements? And that we've seen with our customers, it has led to a lot of benefit, leads direct growth, especially during lean times, provides a constant stream of revenue, and helps you survive the tough times. Any thoughts on that, Don, on how upselling, especially with service agreements, can help?
Yes. We are located in a resort town, and we certainly have off seasons in the spring and fall. And for many years, in the earlier years of my business, those times, things would slow down quite a bit. And so, having a service agreement in place helps obviously keep your guys working, keep revenue flowing, and helps take up, provide work during the off season. So as your technicians are out doing service calls in the summer and the winter, we would always have them promote, doing annual maintenance, and we would always explain to the customers that is best done during one of the off seasons. Now,
Right.
in our market, the off seasons have become less off and more on. We, as I mentioned previously, have so much work that we don't even really nowadays. We don't slow down in the off seasons, but we certainly did, and that is where these service agreements would come into play and help. Most businesses out there it would greatly benefit from having these service agreements in place.
Right, and that's what our data says too. We just ran a quick comparison for businesses with or without service agreements in place, and we see for those businesses that did have a service agreement program in place, they actually created 15% more tickets in the off season than they did than other businesses without service agreements did, and that helped even out the troughs. So without service agreements, for example, you see this dip is significantly larger than the one that you have uh, for a business with service agreements in place. So, it makes a lot of sense to look at service agreements, and of course, the average ticket size with the service agreements is much larger as well. Right, so there's lesser fluctuation and more upsell opportunities, cross-sell opportunities with service agreements in place. Now, with that, we'd just like to understand from the attendees if you currently have a service agreement or maintenance plan program in place today that you offer proactively to your customers. Just a simple yes or no answer, yes or no question. Should take about 5 seconds, and we'll publish the results right in front of you. And if there's any questions, we have a couple of questions from Dwayne, and well, it's about payroll and how do you ensure you pay your employees fairly. Don, do you want to pick that up now? I'll just
Sure.
present that question up
Yeah.
on the screen.
The employees are your front line out there in the public, and my theory has always been offer the very highest rate of pay, and you're going to get the cream of the crop representing your company out there to your customers. And not only the pay rate, but also the benefits. And we offer a full line of benefits: health, dental, vision, life, 6 paid holidays, paid vacations, 40, and we're starting a 401k January 1st. That's mandated by the state of Colorado. We used to have a 401k back before the recession, and the accounting costs got a little bit high, and we stopped when the recession hit. We canceled our 401k, but we're starting one back up now, and our guys are very excited about it. And we're providing a small matching. I think it's 2.5 or 3% that we're adding to the matching. But all of these things combined are important to be able to retain your key people.
Right.
Paying them good, treating them good, treating everybody with respect is huge. Even your helpers, it's important to treat them with respect, never talk down to people. I take advice from helpers. A lot of times it's of little use, but there are times when I've gained interesting perspectives from somebody who's an apprentice or a helper, and
Right. And that's
doesn't hurt to listen.
absolutely, and that's even beside the fact that they would feel empowered if you ask them for their input. So I'm sure that
Yeah,
that
yeah.
really goes a long way.
It's good to make people feel important, especially your lower tier guys.
Right.
Make them feel a little bit important, and then watch them grow.
Right.
It's like fertilizing the garden.
Yep, absolutely. And from a tactical perspective, Don, how do you calculate payroll? Is it punch in, punch out, or is it depending on the time they spent on each activity, or do you factor in the travel time, or how does that work?
Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we of course use SmartServ, or I wouldn't be here. But everybody gets tickets assigned, and we have shop tickets for things you're doing, cleaning the trucks, restocking trucks, things like that.
Okay.
But you're always working on a ticket the whole time. From the beginning of the day to the end of the day, you're logging in and out of tickets, and of course, the tickets is how we keep track of payroll. And our office manager, tallies up the hours at the end of every biweekly period, and then submits that to our payroll company. And we use a payroll company who, if we tried to do it ourselves, we could not do it as inexpensively or as accurately as they do. And they take responsibility for all of the federal reporting requirements.
Right.
So it just makes sense to do that. But yeah, paying guys well is important. Providing good benefits is important. It's all about retention of good people.
I hear you. Definitely, Don. And that's essentially what matters at the end of it. We still have the poll question open. If anybody wants to punch in their answer, now would be a good time. And we'll close the poll in a couple of seconds and publish the result. Right. And then, Don, there's a second part to this question also, which we'll pick up towards the end of the business. But on the topic of service agreements, we see most of our audience does not have service agreements in place today. And we've got a related question, which is from Dave, saying the business is a year old, and he's curious about what's the best time to start selling service agreements.
Well, right now, I mean, service agreements will get you in the door. Once you're in the door, then you have the opportunity to upsell or maybe improve the piece of equipment that you're being asked to service. The one thing that I would tell you to be careful about is to, be careful not to sell people things that they don't need. Be honest. In doing so, when it does come time for, a equipment replacement, you'll be at the top of the list. But you should start right away, because especially people who are just starting out or only have a few years under their belt. I think service agreements is absolutely a great way for you to grow and keep your trucks rolling, keep your guys busy. It's no question about it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Don. Dave, I hope that answers your question. If you have a follow-up question, please feed that in. Right. While, moving on from service agreements, I'm sure the audience is curious. You did mention in passing how digitization has helped your business, but when it comes down to the specifics, how really does it help? We've jotted down some thoughts that did come up during our precursor discussion, but if you'd like to expand on that a little bit, and maybe just a couple of seconds, a couple of minutes.
Sure. Yeah. Being an old fart like I am, I started out long before computers and the age of digital media. And so, of course, everything was done with pen and paper and filing cabinets and files. And, I worked hard to try and keep accurate files of the things we were doing. Keeping our invoices, packing slips, supplier invoices, our invoices to our customers, diagrams of what we were installing that, I would copy and hand out sheets of paper to my guys, et cetera, et cetera. So come, around the turn of the century, shortly after 2000, I said, I think I need a computer. And so we got some computers, we got QuickBooks going, and I noticed that the computers had a thing called documents. And so being a curious person, I started playing around with documents and found that, hey, I could create files in documents, and I could scan paper and put it into the files. And so I began digitizing our entire filing system. That took years. And, it took a while to learn it. You think about, around the turn of the century, most of us weren't very IT savvy, and I was no exception. I'm still somewhat challenged in the IT world, but I know how to do the simple things, and filing on a computer was just awesome. And then, we used QuickBooks to make work orders and estimates and do our invoicing and this and that. But you couldn't really do scheduling in QuickBooks. And then along came, field service management companies like SmartServ. And, I didn't discover SmartServ right out of the gate. I tried 3 other field service management companies before going to SmartServ. And, each one of those companies had their good aspects and their bad aspects. And obviously, the fact that I moved through 3 of them and ended up with SmartServ, the bad aspects of those companies outweighed the good. And when I signed on with SmartServ, one of the things I told the gentleman that we spoke with at first was, well, if I sign on with you guys, I'm going to have certain expectations. I'm going to ask you to change things that I'm going to ask you to help dial this SmartServ in to best serve my company. And they promised that they would do that, and they have followed through in doing that. I have, I've caused quite a few changes, or I guess I've asked for and gotten quite a few new features in SmartServ that were specific to helping me run my business, and that's been quite helpful. And
Thank you,
but
Don.
it's an ongoing process. There seems to be, we work every day, every week, thinking of new ideas that could better streamline our office. And of course, the whole purpose of having this field service management software is to make things flow smoothly from, creating a new customer, then creating a service ticket, assigning that ticket, dispatching your employees and your trucks, and keeping track of your employees and their trucks, and then having the employees create notes, which we then turn into use in creating the invoices, and very importantly, keeping track of their time. And one of the features that I asked SmartServ to do was to enhance the time cards in SmartServ to be able to support the labor hours on the service tickets. And so, they created, they further enhanced it so I can select any date range I want. I can have the ticket number appear on the time card report, and I can easily, download these and send them out to the customer to show them that. Then the customer can see the individual employee each day he worked on that project, his clock in time and his clock out time. And that has helped immensely in making customers feel good about paying for the labor that we're billing for.
Right. Wonderful. Thank you, Don. And at this moment, I'd love to just get an input from the audience about the kind of setup, the software setup in place today, because we've come across a lot of businesses today that are still on pen and paper, some that are using a variety of software to take care of everything from accounting to field service management, and some that are just using a single field service management software. And then again, a combination of both is also that we've seen a lot of times. So we'd like to just lean on our audience a little bit and understand what you use today to run your business. What's the most trusted tool from what's available on screen? We'll open this up for just a few seconds, and we'd love your inputs before we move on. And I understand we're on time, Don. We're a little bit over, so we have just one more aspect to cover before we launch into the Q&A. And thank you to the audience for being so patient. I'm sure there's a lot of value that you've been able to gather so far. And with the Q&A, before the Q&A, we'll just have Don share a few tips for business owners starting, growing your business, right? Let's quickly have some responses, all the responses ideally to this question before we move on. And we will publish the responses in just a moment. Okay, so well, that's exactly how we read it, Don. Most of the audience today is using multiple software to run their business, and I believe that was one of your initial challenges also. When you looked at the first three software, you had to use something in addition to that to run your operations.
Yeah, well, the first three systems that we tried were deficient in one way or another. There was one that could not accurately track time, which was just stupid. I mean, the whole concept of this is that you've got to be able to accurately track the time your technicians are working on a ticket. But they had shortcomings in one manner or another. But as far as starting or growing a business, um, you know, uh, one, you've got to have some knowledge of the trade that you're in, or the trade that you're aiming for. And there's back in the day, we had to travel to go to seminars, and I went to lots. We'd go go to other cities, stay in hotels, even fly places, and go to shows, and try to attend everything you can to gain industry exposure, speak to lots of manufacturers, reps, learn about the products so that you can best describe them to your customers. And it's funny, a lot of people tell me that, gosh, must be nice to work for yourself. And I love telling those people that I have more bosses than you can shake a stick at. You look in my SmartServ, and you'll see that I have literally thousands of bosses, and I'm responsible to every one of those people. I have to answer to them. So it's kind of funny. You're in business for yourself, but you're really in business for all those customers.
That's a wonderful outlook to maintain, Don. That's what matters
Yeah,
in a service business.
and growing your business, that's imperative, that you recognize that you are responsible to all those people, and always return calls. Even when we can't help somebody, right now we're in the Christmas season and we're turning down work left and right, but I'll call all these people, and even if we can't help them, I always return people's calls, and I try to help them verbally. A lot of times I can at least give people an idea of something that might help their situation when we have no ability to send a technician out to help them. I can at least give them some ideas. So that's rewarding, and there's no charge for that. You're doing that out of the goodness of your heart. But and that can come back and benefit you in the long run. That same customer might call you back in a year with a big project for you, and you were so kind to help us out last year when we were in trouble, and we would like to see if you might be available to do a project. So
Right.
it comes around. What goes around comes around.
Absolutely. And to the last point, we did a little bit of digging through our research, and really found out that just tracking the number of callbacks that you receive for a certain kind of job helps you reduce those just by tracking them. There's areas that you can work on to improve the efficiency overall, to make sure the work's done right the first time around. And well, that is something you highlighted as something that really helps, because of course you're
when
saving.
when we identify a problem, you've got to react quickly to rectify the problem. And in our case, at one point, we were lacking in technicians who knew how to run line sets properly. We were having a lot of leaks, and so we immediately had to train people. So I took our master refrigerant technician and had him instruct our other guys, our journeymen and our apprentices, how to run line sets, how to do flares, how to how to braze. And we do use zoom lock sometimes too, but I'm a fan of brazing, and mechanical joints are kind of scary to me. But regardless, it's all about training, and if you have a problem, you better attack it fast.
Right, head on.
Yep.
Thank you, Don. And I think this has been a really insightful discussion, and I'm sure it's been really enriching for the audience. But the real value is when you answer their questions directly. And well, it's time for the Q&A session now. Dwayne had a follow-up question to the question about how you pay your technicians based on the time they spend on the field. And the other part of that is how you bill your customers. Do you bill them on including the travel from one location to the other? Do you start billing them then? Or do you wait for your technician to actually arrive at the location and then start billing your customer? When does it end and when does it begin for the next one?
Okay, so to answer the first question about pay rate, I try to stay knowledgeable about what other companies are paying their technicians. I have frequently had other companies try to lure my technicians away. And when that happens, normally my technicians come to me and say, hey, I got a offer from this other guy. And so you learn, what was the offer? So, you got to be nosy. You got to snoop around a little bit, ask questions, keep in front of it so that you're paying your guys a rate that is going to, I've used the word retain several times during this webinar, and that's what it's all about. I need to retain my best guys. So I need to make sure that we are paying them better than the competition. And so that's probably the best advice I can give you. A business consultant and friend I had for many years told me, never squabble about how much you pay your best guys. Pay them, pay them, pay them. Don't lose sleep over that. Because that's paramount. That's the number one thing you got to do to be successful, is make sure that you're retaining these good workers and you're paying them well, because that's pay is a big part of what is keeping them there. Benefits is of course the other part, another part, and of course respect is another part as well. I don't ever yell at anybody. I sometimes get mad at objects, like my computer from time to time gets called names, but I never call people names. And, you got to treat people with respect, even if you're unhappy. Respect is key.
Excellent advice. Right.
Yeah. And then moving on to the next question, do we charge windshield time? Well, the answer to that is we damn sure do. It costs a lot of money to keep a fleet of four-wheel drive trucks on the road, and to not charge windshield time is just crazy. You've got customers that live in outlying areas. You've got to contend with road conditions, weather, truck maintenance. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. And so, but here's a key thing that might benefit a lot of you people listening today. We created a customer acknowledgement document. It's an Adobe DocuSign, and it clearly states our rates and terms, and it lays out how we charge. And how we charge is, it's round trip from our shop, travel to the job, the time on the job, and the time traveling back to our shop, or If we're going to another job directly from there, my techs will sign out of that ticket and sign on to the next ticket, and then they're on travel time to the next ticket.
To the next
So, windshield, you have to cover the expense of your vehicles. And as most of us know, that's crazy expensive. Look at how much tires cost now, or a good mechanic. And, it's just, how are you going to cover that cost?
Right. And there's regular wear and tear that you can't even, estimate.
Yeah.
Thank you, Don. And we have a question from Daniel about what's the best technician to office staff ratio? He says he has 6 technicians now and looking at hiring 2 more. What's the ideal support to provide to those individuals in the office from?
I don't think I have a statistic for that. Our office staff, when as we were growing, I guess, when our office staff would become overwhelmed with managing the technicians in the field, we obviously had to add, people to help manage the business. And you've got HR is a big thing as you're growing a business with employees. You've got to have somebody who is experienced at human resources to help manage. There's always a lot of insurance questions from the guys, and tracking of paid time off, vacation time, all these different HR aspects. So, that's a big deal. But, then there's also the day-to-day, processing of supplier invoices, getting those filed, doing job costing, producing your monthly, quarterly, and annual financial reports. All of that chews up office time. Payroll is a big one. So yeah, again, I don't have a statistic, and I've had employees voice concern over the number of people in the office from time to time. And, sometimes that's hard to explain to people. I recently had one of my top guys repeatedly feeling like, gosh, we got too many people in the office. And so I eventually promoted him up to, the main manager for our company. And now he's involved in all the office work. And he said to me a few months ago, he said, "Wow, Don, I never realized what you guys in the office go through."
Now,
and that was good.
I bet he needs more now. Now, I bet his recommendation is we need more office staff.
Not more, but he totally understands. He's very sympathetic to what we in the office go through day to day. We're not just sitting there. It's
right.
It's not all glamour.
So what does your office setup look like today, Don? How many people in the office do you have to support your field force?
Oh gosh, we have an office manager, Angela, who is absolutely fabulous, best office manager ever. We have Destiny, who is our dispatch and permit technician. She does all of the she answers calls from the customers and dispatches the guys, and she does an incredible job. She's only been with us 6 months, and she's absolutely kicking it. She's just awesome. But she also handles all the permits. Permitting is a pretty big thing. Permitting in Colorado, if any of you guys are from Colorado, you'll know how crazy the permits are in Colorado. Depending on where you're working, you might need 1, 2, or 3 permits from different jurisdictions. How do you divide it up? Oh my God, we could do a whole seminar on that. It's insane. but you have to deal with it. And so she's our permit technician, and she does an awesome job of that.
Okay.
So I guess that's two people. We have an estimator who I recently promoted. I got rid of an estimator that we had for years who wasn't really working out, and I now have my son learning estimating. So right now we don't have a real estimator. We have me and my son who is in the process of learning estimation, but as many of you know, that's a years-long process. So we're just diving in headfirst on that. So that's three people. I would be four, and then really that's about it. And we're 22 employees strong. So I think we have a pretty favorable ratio of office staff to field technicians. And, I would have to credit SmartServ with, helping keep that ratio under control, because without it, I think we'd probably need one more person in the office. So, that's
good to hear that, Don. I'm glad we could
yeah.
provide such direct input. And I think although we are a little bit over time, I think we have just one last question that we can take. It's from Dwayne again. And essentially, he wants to know if each one of your employees have their own personal phones that they use to log into SmartServ every day, or do you provide them a company phone that they use on the job?
Apprentices use their phones. Anybody who's, or I should say helpers use their phones. Even apprentices get an iPad. We have, I don't know, we probably have 18 or 20 iPads, and they all have SmartServ on them. And we just, everybody gets assigned an iPad.
Okay.
It's essential to, clocking your time and keeping track of where people are.
Plus, because you've provided them devices, um, they they'd be more responsible in using those devices because it's been provided by the company. It's not just their own phone. Hey, it ran out of battery, left it somewhere. A little more responsible.
Well,
Right?
sometimes when people are just starting out, they're forgetting the iPad at home, they're forgetting to charge it. And, that reflects poorly on them. And they need to be made to understand that, this is how you keep track of your time. This is how you get paid. And
Right.
you don't take care of that thing, it's not going to take care of you, and it's going to reflect badly on you. So it's a measure of performance. Keeping time, I think, is the first item on I've got a list of measures of performance for when we do reviews, and accurate timekeeping is the first item on that review.
Well, it's got a direct monetary impact, so I'm sure it belongs on the top of the list.
Yep. Yeah.
Right. And you found iPads to be the most suitable device, right? Or have you experimented with any other devices?
No. The iPads are bomber. I had used other products up until about, I guess, 4 years ago. I had been told by many people that the iOS devices were really bomber. And so I got my first MacBook Pro and iPad, iPhone, and, all of my stuff communicates across through all the devices. I'm an Apple person now for life. But the iPads are very robust. They almost never break down, and even riding around in the cab of a truck, you spill lunch on them, you spill coffee on them. It doesn't seem to hurt them. So. Yeah, they're pretty bomber.
Thank you, Don. I think that leads us to an amazing conclusion to our webinar. And if there's any other questions that anyone wants to pose to Don, well, we have one more question about iPads with data plans. So, do you use iPads that have a data plan built in, or do you usually connect to Wi-Fi? Data
Good
plan.
question. And the answer is yes. Absolutely, you got to have data plan. You've got to have your techs be able to get on the internet, no matter where they are, whether or not they have in-house internet. You're working on a piece of equipment you haven't run into before. We've all had this happen. You've got to be able to log into the manufacturer's website, download the manual, and in order to be able to effectively troubleshoot and repair the equipment that you're working on. There was a day many years ago when you pretty much knew every boiler or furnace you were going out to work on. Those days are gone. We encounter so many different devices now, and they're all so technical, and they all change every year. And you've got to have an iPad with data to effectively serve your customers.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you for that input, Don. We do have a couple of more questions, but I'm afraid we've overextended, so we'll respond to those questions over email. And thank you. I'd like to really extend a thank you to all the attendees. And Don, thank you so much for taking out time for your busy schedule to conduct this webinar with us. It was a pleasure interacting with you leading up to the webinar and during the webinar. So really appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you to the audience.
Thank you, Adi, and thank you to all of you who listened.
Well, have a great day ahead, everyone. And Don, look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Likewise. Thanks.